Hello, everybody. Welcome to the weekend edition daily stand-up of the Energy News Beat. My name's Stuart Turley, President and CEO of the Standstone Group. I hope you had an absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving with family, friends, and hopefully you listened to some of the podcasts that we had come out this week as you were traveling. We know that we got a lot of great feedback on all of our great stories. There's some really crazy things going on. I did not have on my bingo card this week that President Trump would say, hey, I'm going to put 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada. And then Mexico and Canada call up Trump and go, well, that's not necessarily a good thing. So not only are we having peace deals looking to sign all around the world, President Trump is not even in the office and he's making things happen. So shout out to him. Shout out to all of our followers, all of our new folks that are signing up. We have got great numbers. We're putting the year-end numbers, and it's looking like millions of download and millions of transcripts read. Man, we are just so blessed, and thank you for everything, all of the fans. So thank you. Have a great time, and I'm turning this over to the staff. Have a great day. We'll talk to you all soon.
Half of the U.S. at risk for blackouts during extreme cold this winter, according to Grid Watchdog. I mean, guys, it's going to be cold here too. A new report out by the North American Electricity or Electric Reliability Council, known as NERC, they're in charge of assessing the United States and Canada's grid reliability, has basically released a report calling the 2024-2025 Winter Reliability Assessment. Has some very crazy stuff. The report warns, here's a quote, electricity supplies are at risk from freezing temperatures that threaten reliable operation of bulk power systems known as BPS generators, fuel supply issues for natural gas power generation, and wind and solar energy resource limitations. Pretty unbelievable. And one of the reasons why they're so worried about specifically the grid this winter is going back to what I talked about, what's happened to be in Europe. It's not just going to be cold in Europe. The EIA is forecasting a colder winter than this year, which is also going to strain not only renewables, but also some of the natural gas-fired power generation. Quote from the report, natural gas-fired power generator availability and output can be threatened when natural gas supplies are insufficient or when flow of fuel is unable to be maintained. It's really that second part, the flow of fuel unable to be maintained is most likely going to unfortunately be the issue. And that really hits to the point of where you're reliant on a single source. That's the problem with the grid. It's solely sourced with a few different things. We've obviously attempted to diversify away, but I mean, if you just have one coal plant in your town, that does get a little spicy. If you're just reliant on wind or solar, it could get even worse. The Mid-Continent Independent System Operator, known as MISO, that's one of the kind of electrical reasons. It covers 15 states across the Midwest and northern Great Plains and a little bit of South Central U.S., has actually reduced its coal and natural gas-fired generation by 5 gigawatts since last year. And they specifically point that out, NERC does, because that's going to create problems when all of your other systems can't come up. You've reduced it in favor of these other types of electricity generation, aka wind and solar, which are going to struggle just as much, if not more, in this crazy weather. To give you guys an idea, the average American home consumes about 900,000 watt hours per month. And, because it's it's a sinusoidal wave, which means you use a lot more energy in the mornings and at night than you do during the day because you're gone. But to give you an idea, 5 gigawatts of electricity generation running for 1 hour could power 50 million 100-watt light bulbs for 1 hour. So, I mean, that's how much we've taken offline now. We've taken off 50 million light bulbs for 1 hour by just artificially reducing this stuff. It's pretty unbelievable. Some of the natural gas, specifically the Natural Gas Supply Association, which is a natural gas lobby, has come out and said some of the natural gas reliability stuff is a little bit overblown. I would tend to agree on that side of it. I mean, it's in NERC's interest to just say the grid sucks. We need more funding. They're a lobbying group on the grid side. It's on the natural gas lobbying side. It's in their best interest to say, it's not that bad. The answer obviously is somewhere in the middle. The big issue is that we've taken off intermittent electricity, aka natural gas and coal, in favor of renewables, which are going to do way worse in the winter. And it's not going to look good because it could be chilly. So get your coats, guys. Watch out. It comes back to what I'm saying. We need to make sure that we have a sufficient grid. it doesn't matter if we have ample supply. We have got ample supply here in the United States. The problem is the grid sucks. And, I cut this story from the lineup talking about some of the energy secretary nominees, specifically Chris Wright, Doug Burgum of Interior, and the head of the EPA. One of the things they're going to need to dive into is grid reliability regardless. So pretty fascinating, guys. Get your winter coats. It's going to be cold. California's gas warfare heats up over exodus of oil companies. I mean, this is pretty funny, guys. So if you don't remember, about a month and a half ago, a friend of the show, Oil Slick himself, Governor Gavin Newsom, signed Assembly Bill X2-1. This grants the state the power to, quote, require oil refiners to maintain a minimum inventory of fuel to avoid supply shortages. It's also designed to, quote, limit, quote, higher profits for the industry, and authorizes whatever this bureaucracy they're creating is to force, quote, refiners to plan for resupply during refiner maintenance. Basically, 2 days later, Phillips 66 announced it's shutting down the refinery, which has a facility in Carson and another 5 miles away in Wilmington that's linked by a pipeline. And they're doing that in the fourth quarter of 2025, so about a year from now. Both sites have been in operation for basically 100 years and have done about a million barrels of gasoline for Southern California motors. That's even according to the New Los Angeles Times, which is no friend of the oil business, I'll tell you that much. Phillips 66 believes that, quote, this is the long-term sustainability of the Los Angeles refinery is uncertain, which I love how this article says, which is a polite way to say that lawmakers are creating hostile business conditions that conventional energy companies to struggle under. To give you an idea, guys, that Phillips 66 has about 600 employees full-time, and about 300 contractors will be impacted. And obviously you're going to see, if you're living in Southern California, gas prices also shoot up tremendously. Phillips 66 has pledged to work with California to maintain current levels, but to increase supplies to meet consumer needs. They will be out of there come 2025. So who knows that? It just goes to show you that when the free market is the best way to manage all this. Going back to the grid, if they're going to mess with the grid, and what I would recommend if somebody asked me, hey, Mike, what would you do to fix the grid? I would incentivize the free market to figure it out, because I know I'm not smart enough to figure it out, but I do know that the market will figure it out, because the market will always guide itself. I just got done listening to a great interview with the CEO of Uber talking about how they manage their prices. And guess what? On Uber, they don't manage their prices. Guess what? As the prices of Uber's rise on the marketplace, more drivers sign up because they see a profit to be made. And guess what? That increase of supply of drivers drives down the price, because now the supply reaches demand. Vice versa, when prices get too low, drivers drop off, raising the price because now demand is higher than supply. The same thing can happen in the grid. If you can incentivize people to invest in the grid, and I don't know quite how to do this, because the problem is, the grid is somewhat monopolistic, is we don't need 7 different grids. We need one grid. You need one set of pipes running into your house. You don't need 7 different companies. So we do need a way to figure that out. But if I was on this energy council that they're creating, go Chris Wright, go Doug Burgum, I would figure out a way to do grid reliability and make the marketplace figure out how to fix the grid, because they will figure it out. And it's going to hurt you guys in California. If anybody are listening from California, you're about to be buying all of your oil from China. Ooh, I'm sure they produce it clean, much cleaner than, it's just unbelievable. I mean, we know it's super hard if you're an oil and gas company to do business in California. The Attorney General, Rob Bonta, has recently sued Exxon Mobil over, quote unquote, plastic recycling messaging. Again, it's a scam. They're just trying to, look what we're doing. We're hard on oil and gas. Well, guess what? You're driving out energy and you're going to jack up prices. So you got what, if I was in California, your tax dollars are going, in my opinion, to some pretty ridiculous stuff.
Germany urged to return to nuclear as wind and solar fail. You can't buy this kind of entertainment. When you go green, you absolutely, and you go to renewable energies, which you've heard, if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that renewable energy is not renewable. It is absolutely a waste. Turley's law, which was very much coined on a podcast, is a true thing. The last 4 years we've been tracking, the more money that is spent in renewable energy, the more fossil fuels will be used. And in Germany, they had phased out their entire fleet of nuclear reactors over the last several years and hoped to rely on renewable energy, claiming they were cheaper and cleaner. And that is not the case. At the UN Climate Change Conference in Blackouts, Rafael Grossi, head of the International Atomic Agency, the IEA, had warned Germany can no longer turn its back on nuclear power and needs a reorientation of energy policy as necessary. The government must reopen its debate on nuclear power. That is an absolute wonderful statement. They've got reactors that they have not dismantled yet that they could fire back up. The timing of his comment is no coincidence. Germany's economy is suffering from energy problems while the government is consumed in internal disputes. I'll tell you what, you can go green or go woke, if you would, and be industrialized. If you want to deindustrialize, then you're going to be voted out of office. Green equals voted out. So let's take a look at the more money that is spent on renewable energy, the more fossil fuels are going to be used. Let's focus our energy on reducing the methane gases, if you would, and better natural gas plants. The only way that AI is going to take off with unlimited power is with natural gas and nuclear. I hate to tell you this, we're firing up a lot of coal plants around the world just to keep the lights on. So let's go to Saudi Arabia. That tags right along into this one. How Saudi Arabia turned back climate progress at COP29. Saudi Arabia and its allies have two words they didn't want to see separated at COP29 deal: fossil fuels. The faction got their way after 2 weeks of bitter negotiations in Azerbaijan, revising gains made in earlier climate talks and helping knock this proceedings off track. The Gulf states surprised the world at COP28 when it joined nearly 200 nations in agreeing to transition away from fossil fuels, but it's trying to walk that historic moment back ever since. The Arab group will not accept any text that targets specific sectors, including fossil fuels. You've heard me also talk on this podcast. You have to applaud the Saudi government for taking a balanced, all the above approach. They're funding their government with fossil fuels. They're funding their green hydrogen projects and everything else from the profits of the fossil fuels. That makes sense. They are not, and you've heard Michael on the podcast, and I believe he said it yesterday, the U.S. delivers the cleanest molecules in energy in the planet. We absolutely have it down to a science. Why don't we export that technology to Africa and really teach people and build the equipment here, teach them how to do that, and then let them run all their natural gas that they can using our clean air technology and our clean power plants? It seems like a really big win, because all of a sudden, then, as in Inuk, and we as the African head of the energy chamber there, he said, let's build it that way so that we have great trading partners and we eliminate energy poverty. So anyway, I thought it was pretty funny. One crucial tactic the Saudis deployed this year was, starting from the debate over COP29 agenda itself, was to try to take the fossil fuel discussion off the table by arguing that talks in Baku were supposed to focus on a finance deal. Well, the finance deal has turned out to be just absolutely a wealth transfer, is all that finance deal is. Let's totally throw all that crap out on the side. Let's get everybody the lowest cost kilowatt per hour with the least amount of impact on the environment, and that means running coal, natural gas, nuclear, and wind and solar when it makes sense. If they are fiscally responsible, let's run them. If not, let's run the others, but do it appropriately. President Trump's energy agenda will have a heavy natural gas focus. This article is a find on Forbes. It is actually from David Blackman, the David Blackman. I mean, not just a David Blackman. He is the David Blackman. This is a great article, and it kind of folds into the energy theme that we have for today, and that is natural gas, good, no energy, bad. The rationale invoked by the White House to justify the permitting interruption was to enable the Department of Energy to study and update economic environmental impact analysis associated with the LNG export business. To that end, the DOE is expected to issue a final report. And I don't think it really matters because President Trump put out on X, I don't care. I'm going to open it up.
I mean, hey, it's what needs to happen. I mean, it's probably part of why you're seeing natural gas prices spike right now. Obviously, we've rolled over into the new contracts. Some of that just has to do with us rolling into winter, but the world needs LNG. I covered it on my solo show on Monday, Stu. It's about to be cold in Europe. They're going to be back to burning the shoes.
Oh, it's a horrible thing that's going on in Europe right now, Michael. And I've talked to George McMillan again, just as we were getting ready to get on this call. Not only did you and I laugh about a Sergeant Oshla, the German, he's had 3 calls to Putin begging for gas now. This is a documented thing going, may I please have some gas? So if we watch Oliver and he goes up and goes, may I have some more cruel? Holy smokes. All right. So anyway, shout out to David. Let's go to Exxon. Don't expect drill baby drill under Trump. And I thought this was a great one. This is ExxonMobil upstream president Liam Mallon said, we're not going to see anybody in drill baby drill mode, said at the Energy Intelligence Forum conference in London as it was carried by Reuters. A radical change in production is unlikely because the vast majority, if not everybody, is focused on the economics of what they're doing. Michael, this is because the ESG newspaper hit all of the operators in the forehead all the way and went through their head and came out the back end, and they are going to be giving returns to their investors. This is what I see. This is a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, again, prices will only fall as much as oil production comes online. And if producers are signaling, hey, we're not necessarily going to be drill, baby, drill, we may even pull back a little bit in an effort to sustain prices, well, then, there's not much the president can do other than signal, hey, I want to drill, baby, drill. Well, how do you incentivize companies to drill? Well, you either have to subsidize them so that they can make up the incremental revenue that they're going to lose by bringing rigs online, lowering the oil price, or you bring on so much production that the drop in oil price, the net of it all ends up being more. I don't see either of those happening.
Right.
So what's going to happen? I think you're just going to see a little bit of a status quo. And I think that's what you've seen in the marketplace over the last 2 weeks is oil prices get down to that 65 range, spring back up. They've fallen a little bit today. We'll cover mainly why, a little bit of a ceasefire hopefully going on in the Israel conflict. But it'll be very interesting what happens. I do think what Exxon is signaling is kind of the thought among at least the larger mid caps. I know if you're a smaller guy, you may thinking about how it might be easier to crank out a few more rigs. It'll be very interesting to see what happens.
Oh, you bet.